My mom told me my twin brother died at birth. We honored him every year. But then I got a message from a guy with my face saying, "I think you're my brother." After we met, Mom ran, tried to OD, and said, "If he stays near you, one of you will die." My name is Ron Delaney. I'm 32 years old, and I live in northern Illinois, not far from where I grew up. But this part of the story starts way before that, back when I was 5, standing at the edge of a quiet pond, holding a basket of flower petals in my hand. Every year on my birthday, my mom brought me to that same pond. She'd crouch next to me, dip her fingers into the cold water, and say softly, "For Ryan." Then she'd scatter a few petals, close her eyes, and whisper something under her breath. I'd do the same, though I never knew what I was supposed to say. Ryan was my twin. That's what she told me. He died during birth. We were born premature, and only one of us made it. She'd say he was my other half, my calmer half, and how I was never meant to be alone in the world. "You were the fiery one, even in the womb," she said once. "But Ryan would have steadied you." I think I heard that line 100 times before I turned 10. She kept one of his socks, a little green thing, no bigger than her palm. She claimed it was all she had left of him. She stored it in a wooden box lined with blue felt, and every now and then, she'd take it out and just stare at it. She never talked about what happened in the hospital, just that it was sudden and sad. "You almost didn't make it either," she'd say, like she was reminding me to be grateful. And I was, I guess. But it was a weird way to grow up, always in the shadow of a brother I never knew. Like I wasn't enough on my own. My dad, he never talked about it. If she mentioned Ryan, he'd either walk out of the room or act like he didn't hear. No opinions, no comfort, nothing. He never came with us to the pond, never touched the sock. When I asked him once why we didn't have pictures of Ryan, he just grunted, there weren't any. Back then, I thought that meant he was just too hurt to talk about it. Looking back, I see it for what it really was, avoidance. Distance. Like he'd build a wall around the whole thing, and if I tried to peek over it, I got silence in return. So every year, we went to that pond. Me and my mom, tossing petals for a boy I never met. Trying to believe in the idea of someone I wasn't even sure had existed. I was 25 when everything I thought I knew cracked wide open. It started on a Tuesday night, sometime after midnight. I was half asleep on the couch, scrolling aimlessly through my phone, when a new message popped up. It was from someone named Ryan Elridge. No mutual friends, no prior connection. The subject line just said, "I think I'm your brother." At first, I thought it was spam, or some messed up scam. But then I opened it. "Hi, this might sound insane, but I believe I'm your twin brother. My name is Ryan. I was adopted at birth, and I've been trying to find my biological family. I think that might be you. I found your name on a genealogy site. We were born in the same town. Same birthday. Please reach out if you're willing to talk." I sat up fast. My heart started hammering in my chest. His profile picture was small, blurry, but I swear to God, it was like looking into a mirror. Same dark eyes. Same crooked jaw. Same uneven dimple on the right cheek. My mouth went dry. I didn't respond. Just locked my phone and sat there in the dark, feeling like someone had knocked the wind out of me. The next morning, I reread the message. Then again, I pulled up his profile. He had maybe a dozen photos, most of them selfies. But they were enough. Enough to confirm what I already feared. He looked exactly like me. I didn't tell anyone. Not my mom. Not my friends. I didn't even tell the girl I was dating at the time. For a week, I ignored the message. Tried to convince myself it was a prank or a coincidence. But it ate at me. I couldn't sleep, couldn't concentrate at work. Every time I looked in the mirror, I wondered who else had the same face staring back. Finally, I replied, "We should talk. Video chat." He responded within 5 minutes. That night, we got on a call. As soon as the screen lit up, it was like staring through a glass at a slightly different version of myself. His hair was a little longer. His posture more relaxed. But the face? Identical. Even the scar near his eyebrow. I had one too, from falling off a bike when I was 6. We both just sat there for a few seconds, not speaking. Then he laughed. "Holy shit," he said. "It's really you." I couldn't talk at first. I just nodded, eyes stinging. He told me he grew up in Wisconsin, about 2 hours north. His adoptive parents were kind, stable people. They'd always told him he was adopted. No secrets, just not a lot of details. They said he'd come from a complicated situation, but no one ever told him he had a twin. He only found out because his adoptive dad had a friend at the hospital back then, and that friend finally gave up a name. Mine. I wanted to deny it. I wanted to say it was impossible, but I couldn't, because Ryan smiled, leaned forward into the camera, and said, "Hey, Ron, you ever notice that birthmark under your ribs?" And I did. He had the same one. The phone call to my mom didn't go how I expected. I waited a couple days after the video chat with Ryan. I kept hoping the world would somehow go back to normal, that I'd wake up and realize I'd misunderstood everything. But the truth just sat there, pulsing under my skin. One morning, I called her. "Hey, Ma," I said, trying to sound casual. "Ronnie, how's work?" "I'm fine. Listen, I need to ask you something." A pause. "What's wrong? You told me Ryan died when we were born, right?" Silence. I waited. "Mom? What kind of question is that?" she finally asked, her voice tight. "I talked to someone. A guy named Ryan Elridge. Same birthday, same birthmark. He says he's my twin." She didn't answer. I heard her breathing pick up, sharp and shallow like she'd been running. "Mom." Click. She hung up. I stared at the phone for a while, then tried calling back. Straight to voicemail. That same day, I drove to her condo. It was a little two-bedroom place near Rockford, neat and quiet, like she liked it. I knocked. Waited. Nothing. I peeked through the front window, blinds closed, lights off. The next morning I came back with a coffee and knocked again. Still nothing. Later that afternoon, I convinced the building manager to let me in. He didn't even argue when I told him I was worried something had happened to her. But when he opened the door, I could see it instantly. She was gone. The place was clean, but empty. Her favorite mug was missing. Her knitting basket, gone. Her bedroom closet hung open, bare wire hangers swinging slightly. In the bathroom, the towel rack was empty. No note. No sign of where she went. I stood in the middle of the living room, heart pounding. I felt 10 years old again, scared and confused, waiting for her to come back from the grocery store after she'd forgotten I was in the car. I called every relative I could think of, my Aunt Carla, my cousin Jeff, even her old neighbor, Mrs. Lentz. Nobody had heard from her. Finally, I called Uncle Dennis. He lived in Arizona now, hadn't talked to us in years. I figured it was a long shot. He picked up on the second ring. "Ron." "Yeah, I'm looking for my mom." A long pause. "I heard," he said quietly. "You heard what?" He sighed. "Look, I'm not the one to explain this. It's not mine to tell. Please, Uncle D, I need to know where she is." "I don't know where she is now," he said. "But, Ron, there's a lot you were never told. A lot your father tried to keep quiet." That's when I knew I had to find him. I hadn't spoken to my dad in nearly a decade. After he moved out when I was a teenager, he slowly drifted off the grid. We exchanged a couple of texts over the years, maybe a card on my birthday. But that was it. Still, I tracked him down. A cousin said he was working maintenance at a mining outfit in Nevada. I found the company, then found his name in the employee directory. I called him. He answered on the third ring. "Hello, Dad. It's Ron." Another pause. "Hey, you okay?" "No. I need to talk to you about Ryan." He was quiet. For a long time. Then he said, "I was wondering when this would catch up to us." "What happened?" I asked. He let out a slow, cracked breath. "Your mother, she had a break. After the birth. Psychotic, the doctors called it. She became convinced that one of the twins would destroy the other. Said it was fate. That one of you would ruin the other's soul." My stomach dropped. "So they told her Ryan died," he continued. "We didn't know what else to do. She wasn't stable. They said the delusions would pass. But they didn't. And you let me grow up thinking my twin was dead." He didn't argue. He just said, quietly, "We did what we thought would protect her. And you?" I didn't reply. I couldn't. Because I wasn't sure which part one was most furious about, the lie, or how much of my life it had quietly swallowed. We talked for over an hour. My dad sounded older than I remembered. Tired, gravelly, like he'd been holding this in for years. He said the hospital stay after our birth had turned into a nightmare. Mom had been detached, erratic. She refused to hold us both. Said something was wrong. That one of them has the shadow. She meant Ryan. According to him, the doctors initially thought it was postpartum depression. But when she started calling Ryan the cursed one and refused to let him sleep in the same bassinet as me, they diagnosed her with a postpartum psychotic episode. My dad said he didn't even know that was a thing until then. They told me she could hurt him, Ron. Or hurt herself. I panicked, he said. We didn't want to lose either of you. So they made a decision. They gave Ryan up, quietly, unofficially, to a family friend who lived 2 towns over. A nurse who had a sister struggling with fertility. It was supposed to be temporary, just until Mom got better. She didn't. Instead, she rewrote the story in her mind. Ryan had died. There was a funeral. The sock in the box. His only remnant. A sacred item, she'd called it. Something to keep his energy close, but contained. That line made me go cold. She kept that sock like it was a relic, I told him. Took it out every birthday. Said it was his. My dad sighed. I didn't have the strength to correct her. Later that night, I called Ryan. He answered immediately. You okay? He asked. I found out why she lied, I said. Then I told him everything. When I mentioned the sock, he went quiet for a moment. That's funny, he said. I had something like that, too. What do you mean? My parents, the ones who raised me, they had this blue baby sock in a plastic box. Said it was from the hospital. A keepsake. I always thought it was weird they only had one. I sat up. Wait, blue? Yeah. You said yours was green? I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. We both went silent. And then the same thought hit us at once. What if they got our names mixed up? I said. Ryan laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. You think we were swapped? It makes sense. If she was out of it, and Dad was panicked, the nurse might have just picked a name to go with each baby. Nobody double-checked. Jesus, he muttered. All this time, I've been Ryan, but maybe I'm not. I leaned back against the wall. And maybe I'm not wrong. We stayed on the phone for another hour, piecing things together. The hospital, the socks, the way Mom had talked about the one with light and the one with shadow. It sounded like a bad dream, like something you'd see in an old folktale or a horror movie. But it was our real life. 2 boys born on the same day. One raised in mourning, the other in silence. And maybe neither of us even knew who we really were. 3 days after that phone call, Ryan drove down to meet me in person. I gave him the address to my apartment just outside Rockford, and he made the trip from Wisconsin in the middle of a rainy Saturday. I sat by the window half the morning, pacing, cleaning, pretending like I wasn't losing my mind. But when I finally saw his car pull up, everything inside me went still. I opened the door before he could knock. And there he was. Same height, same eyes, same dumb cowlick in the exact same spot. I don't know what I expected. Maybe some kind of overwhelming emotion or dramatic music in the background. But all I felt was this tightness in my chest. Like my body recognized him before my brain could catch up. He stood there holding his 6-pack of root beer and said, I didn't know what to bring. I laughed, a weird, nervous kind of laugh. You brought yourself. That's plenty. We didn't hug. Not at first. We just looked at each other, like 2 kids at a mirror maze, waiting for someone to tell us it was okay to believe what we were seeing. Inside, we sat on my old brown couch and started comparing notes. Childhood stories. Hobbies. Food preferences. Turns out we both hated olives and had the same weird habit of tapping our forks twice before eating. It was eerie, like meeting a stranger you somehow knew your whole life. I used to talk to the mirror when I was a kid, Ryan said. Like I thought someone might answer back. I used to do the same, I said quietly. He looked over at me. Guess we weren't talking to ourselves. There was a lot of laughing, but it wasn't lighthearted. It was nervous, cracked around the edges. We were trying to wrap our heads around 25 years of separate lives that were never supposed to be separate. He told me about his parents, how good they were, how they had always supported him, how they never had other kids. They gave me everything, he said. But there was always this itch. Like I was missing something. We both paused at that. We knew what it was now. Eventually, we got to the hard part. I want to see her, Ryan said. I steady. I figured you would, I said. But maybe it should be me first. He looked surprised, but he didn't argue. I don't know what state she's in, I explained. Last I checked, she was still gone. But if I find her, I'll go first. Feel it out. He nodded. Okay. We sat in silence for a while, both staring at the root beer bottles on the coffee table. Then he added, I'll wait in the car. Just let me know when it's time. I didn't know if I was ready, but I knew he was. The hospital was gray, inside and out. One of those older psych facilities attached to a larger medical center. All faded carpet, buzzing fluorescents, and the constant faint smell of bleach. I signed in at the desk, showed my ID, and waited while they checked that she could have a visitor. She's stable today, the nurse said, giving me a tight smile. A little drowsy, but alert. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. They led me down a hallway that felt a mile long, past rooms with partially open doors and voices echoing from televisions. Then they stopped in front of room 214. I took a breath, the deepest one I could, and stepped inside. She was sitting upright in bed, wearing one of those standard light blue gowns, her hair pulled back into a loose braid. Her face looked thinner, older than just a few weeks ago. Her hands were folded in her lap, and for a moment, she didn't even look up. Then she did. "Ronnie," she said, smiling. "You came." "Yeah," I said quietly, taking the chair near the window. "I did." She looked at me for a long moment. "Have you been to the pond lately?" That was her first question. I swallowed. "No, I haven't." She nodded like that made perfect sense. "Ryan's been restless," she whispered. "I can feel it." I sat forward. "Mom, Ryan is alive." She blinked. Her lips twitched slightly, but she didn't say anything. "He was adopted. His name is Ryan Elrich. He contacted me. We've met. He's a good man." She stared at me. Then something in her expression cracked. Her whole body stiffened like a wire had been pulled tight. "No," she said, her voice suddenly sharp. "Don't say that. Mom." "No." Her hands flew up. "You don't understand. That wasn't Ryan. Ryan is dead. That thing is not him." I stood up slowly. "He's not a thing. He's your son. You had two." She started shaking her head, faster and faster. "No, no, no. I kept you safe. I kept you safe. Don't you see?" A nurse peeked through the glass window. I raised a hand and nodded that I was okay, even though I wasn't. "He was evil," she hissed, her voice rising. There was something in his eyes. I saw it when they put him in my arms. Shadows. Blackness. It was there even then. "Mom," I said, trying to stay calm. "He's not evil. He's kind. He's just a person." She screamed. It started as a gasp, then exploded into a guttural cry. "He's come back. He's come back to finish it." Two nurses rushed in, one with a syringe. My mom was thrashing, pulling at her foreline, screaming words that didn't even make sense. The curse. The curse. It's still inside him." I stepped back, hands shaking, heart racing. They sedated her quickly, gently. She slumped sideways in the bed, mumbling something under her breath as her eyes fluttered shut. One nurse glanced at me. "I'm sorry," she said. "She has days like this." I nodded, numb. But inside, something broke. Because I realized there was no truth that would bring her back. Ryan hadn't just been erased. He had been made into a monster. In her mind, he always had been. Back at the apartment, Ryan was waiting in the parking lot, sitting behind the wheel of his old Subaru. When he saw me coming, he stepped out fast and walked toward me with that same hopeful look he'd worn during our video call. I didn't say anything until we were inside. Then I shut the door and told him everything. She screamed. I said you weren't real? Said you were cursed?" Ryan didn't move. He just sat on the edge of the couch and stared at the floor, hands clasped tight. "She really believes it," I said. "Not just a lie to protect me. Not just a cover-up. She truly believes you're dangerous." He nodded slowly. "So that's why?" "Yeah, that's why." We sat in silence for a long time. The kind of silence that feels like the air itself weighs more than it should. Finally, Ryan said, "I always wondered why I felt like a ghost." "What do you mean?" He looked up, like I was missing something. Like there was a space carved out of my life that I could never quite explain. My parents loved me, but there was this itch. Like I was living someone else's life by accident. I felt that too. Maybe from the opposite side, like I was always carrying someone else's grief, someone I never met. We talked for hours after that. We dug through the whole mess. The sock, the birth certificate copies Ryan had requested, the rumors from the hospital staff, even the records my dad had kept hidden in a box that Ryan found when he'd reached out to one of the adoption lawyers. The timelines matched up. The location. The family friend who took Ryan in, a nurse named Bethany Miller, had left town less than a month after the birth. No formal paperwork. Just a quiet favor for a panicked man who thought he was doing the right thing. We pieced it all together. The lie wasn't just that Ryan had died. The lie was our entire foundation. He hadn't just been given up, he'd been erased. I hadn't just been raised alone. I'd been raised with a ghost shadowing every birthday, every quiet moment, every flower petal dropped into a pond. And the worst part? We didn't even know which name belonged to who. "I might be Ron," Ryan said. "You might be Ryan." I shook my head. Does it even matter anymore? Not to me, he said, but maybe to her. Then my phone rang. It was the hospital. I answered quickly, heart racing. Is this Ron Delaney? A nurse asked. Yes. We wanted to let you know your mother's gone. My stomach dropped. Gone. She walked out, right past a nurse doing rounds. We think she slipped out the side courtyard door. We've contacted the authorities. Ryan looked up at me, reading my face before I said a word. She's missing, he asked. I nodded. The police said we should lay low for now, I whispered. In case she still believes you're dangerous. Ryan didn't respond. He just stared out the window, like he already knew. My dad drove through the night. He showed up at my apartment around 3 a.m., headlights flashing across the street like a warning. Ryan and I were already packed and waiting. Neither of us had slept. She'll go somewhere familiar, Dad said, stepping into the living room. He looked older than I remembered, shoulders slumped, eyes red. Somewhere that feels safe. Safe for her, I said. He nodded. We made a list of places she might run to. Old friends, old family homes, parks, churches, all possibilities. But one spot kept floating to the top of our minds. The cabin, I said. Dad looked up sharply. Lake Brinton. Yeah. It was a rundown lakeside place we used to visit when I was a kid. One of the few good memories I had. Mom used to hum while chopping vegetables in the kitchen there. Said the silence of the trees made her feel clear. We hadn't been back in over 15 years. Dad pulled out his phone and called the current owner, some guy named Clark who'd bought it as a fixer-upper. He said he hadn't been up there in months and didn't mind us checking in. You think someone broke in, he asked. Something like that, Dad muttered. We left before sunrise. 3 hours later, we pulled up to the cabin. It was still standing, somehow. A single-story structure wrapped in rotting wood and mossy trim, tucked behind a curtain of pine trees. The gravel crunching under our tires was the only sound for miles. We stepped out slowly. Ryan scanned the property like he was expecting her to charge at him from the shadows. I couldn't blame him. The front door was unlocked. Dad reached for the handle, but paused before opening it, like he needed one more breath. Then he pushed it open. The smell hit us first. Mildew, old paper, something sweet and rotten. We stepped inside and found the living room dark, lit only by thin beams of light sneaking through the dusty blinds. And there she was, sitting cross-legged on the floor in the back room, humming quietly. She didn't look up. She was surrounded by things, old photos, folded letters, torn notebook pages. They were scattered all around her like a shrine. In the center sat the green sock, still perfectly preserved. She was holding something in her lap. It took me a second to realize it was a framed ultrasound image. Probably ours. She was humming a lullaby, one I half remembered from my earliest years. Her eyes were open, but far away. I took a cautious step forward. Mom. She didn't react. Ryan stayed behind me, frozen in the doorway. She never once looked at him. It was like her brain edited him out. Dad walked past us, slowly. He crouched beside her and gently took her hand. Karen, he said, voice barely audible. You need help. She stopped humming. Then, softly, she whispered, he's come to take him away. It wasn't clear who she meant, but she said it like it was a prophecy. And still, she never looked at Ryan. She didn't fight when we brought her out of the cabin. She let my dad lead her by the hand, quiet and glassy-eyed. No outbursts, no screams, just silence, like she'd run out of energy or maybe slipped into some other layer of herself. We got her to the car and drove straight to the nearest hospital in Sheboygan. They admitted her to the psychiatric unit within the hour. They said she was dehydrated, malnourished, sleep-deprived, but calm. 2 days passed before they let me in to see her again. Ryan waited outside. She was sitting upright in her new bed, combing her fingers through her hair in slow, repetitive motions. When I entered, she smiled faintly, not recognition exactly, just something soft and vacant. Ronnie, she said. I sat down beside her. Hi, Mom. You remember the pond? She asked. I do. I used to see him there. Every year. I paused. See who? She looked toward the window. Ryan. You mean his memory? No, she said quietly. Him. He'd be standing just past the edge, watching. I didn't know what to say to that. She turned to me, suddenly sharper. You don't believe me. I don't think he was ever watching you, Mom. I think you were haunted by something else. She went quiet for a long time. Then she said, You think I'm sick? I didn't answer right away. She looked down at her hands. It started before you were born. Nightmares. Every night. One child killing the other. Crying in my stomach. Something scratching. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Sometimes, I dreamed I'd give birth to a baby with no face. I swallowed hard. I told the doctors. They said it was anxiety, but I knew it meant something. She stared at her lap, eyes glazed over. After the birth, I looked into his eyes. Ryan's. I saw shadows. They were just eyes, Mom. No, she whispered. They were wrong. Wrong from the start. Her hands started shaking. They said he was healthy, but I knew better. I could feel it. Every time I held him, I felt cold. My voice cracked. So you gave him away. I saved you. You erased him. She looked at me then, really looked, and for the first time in years, I saw something resembling guilt. I didn't do it to be cruel, she said. I thought I was protecting you. From him. From what he might become. I had to choose. I leaned in. You chose to split us. You chose to live in a lie. She covered her mouth like something was breaking inside her. Then I told her. He's alive. He's here. Right now. She stared at me, lips parted, breath frozen. You want to see? I asked. She shook her head, barely a movement. I can't. Why not? If I look at him and I see the shadow again, I'll know it was always real. And then, almost as if on cue, she reached under the blanket and pulled out a pill bottle. My stomach dropped. What is that? She clutched it to her chest. I didn't take them yet, but I was going to, before you came. I stood up, reached gently, and took the bottle from her trembling hands. Her eyes welled with tears. I didn't want to leave broken, she whispered. But if he's alive, if he's good, then maybe it was me all along. I said nothing, just stepped back and pressed the call button for the nurse. I couldn't fix her, but at least now I understood her. She'd lived in fear of a curse that never existed, and it had stolen everything from all of us. 3 weeks later, the world felt quieter. Ryan had gone back to Oregon. He'd offered to stay longer, but we both knew we needed space. Not from each other, from everything else. He'd been dropped into a nightmare that wasn't his fault, and I could see the weight starting to wear him down. Before he left, we sat at a diner off the highway and talked for hours over greasy hash browns. At the end of the meal, he reached across the table and said, "You're not alone anymore." And I knew he meant it. We texted every day. I visited Mom twice a week at the psychiatric facility. Some days she barely said a word. Other times, she was alert, calm, even reflective. It was strange seeing her like that, stripped of the elaborate rituals and quiet obsessions that shaped my childhood. One afternoon, I brought a photo. It was the first picture Ryan and I had ever taken together. Just a selfie in my apartment, nothing fancy. I printed it at Walgreens, framed it, and set it on the little table beside her bed. She didn't react right away, just looked at it. After a long silence, she said, "You look peaceful together." I blinked. What? Her eyes didn't leave the photo. Like you belong to each other. I swallowed hard. We do. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She just nodded, almost to herself, and leaned back against the pillow. That was the best day. The doctors said her delusions weren't gone, but they were softening. Like clouds drifting apart, letting bits of light through. They thought she might never be fully lucid, not all the time. But with treatment, they hoped she could learn to live with the truth, instead of inside her fantasy. It wasn't much, but it was something. Back home, I cleaned out my closet and found the wooden box. The green sock was still inside. I held it for a long time, running my thumb over the fabric. It was smaller than I remembered. Fragile. I thought about burning it, or burying it at the pond, like a farewell. But in the end, I just folded it back into the box and slid it into a drawer. Not because I needed to hold on to the lie, but because that sock was part of the story. Part of both of us. Ryan called one night while I was out walking. "How's she doing?" he asked. "Better. In pieces." He paused. "And you?" "I'm getting there." We were quiet for a while. Then I said, "You know what's weird? I grew up thinking I had a ghost following me around. A twin who never made it." "Yeah. Now he's real. Alive. Sitting on the other end of this phone call." Ryan laughed softly. "Pretty weird." "Yeah," I said. "But good weird." The moon was out. The street was empty. I could hear my own footsteps echoing off the sidewalk. For the first time in my life, the shadow wasn't behind me. He was beside me.